What is so special about this chapel? What puts it in the midst of Templar legends, and what makes it so attractive to those passionate about history and esotericism? You will find out all of these immediately. The most reasonable account of an important event, which is the transformation of medieval Masons into modern Freemasonry, is placed in the proximity of the village Rosslyn near Edinburgh, Scotland. The dissolution of the Templars created a hiatus, a gap in the activities of Rex Deus families, but did not brought them to an end, because the sacred duty of the families was to preserve the spiritual traditions of the Templars, and as such they continued to further pass down their sacred knowledge in a way which ultimately led to the creation of Freemasonry, of the Rosicrucianism, the spiritual and cultural movement, of the Invisible College and the Royal Society in England. Moreover, they exerted a great influence on those who carried out the Italian Renaissance, and, therefore, had a role in shaping the way of thinking, the arts, the commerce, and the social and religious system across the European continent. In doing so, they contributed greatly to the creation of a culture in which science, democracy, and intellectual freedom could flourish. Theodore Roszak said in his book The Unfinished Animal that almost all the great intellectual figures of the time, including the many of the founding fathers of modern science up to Newton, were deeply interested in esoteric traditions, because they believed that these contained secrets of the human nature and the universe which could not be found elsewhere. The Catholic Church had tried to limit and control all forms of access to knowledge. However, on the other hand, the Rex Deus families, the Templars, and the medieval Masons believed that ars sina scientia nihil est, which translates as art without knowledge means nothing. But who was at the base of this imposing construction? The Sinclair family. Following the dissolution of the Templars and the disappearance of their treasures, the wealth of a prominent Templar family from Scotland, the Sinclair, the Rosslyn family, has improved significantly. The Sinclair family, who was already rich, suddenly became what we call nowadays extraordinarily rich. A baron of Rosslyn, who was to become the third Sinclair Earl of Orkney, William Sinclair, was well known for his incredible wealth. He was the architect and the builder of the Rosslyn Chapel, a stone library unique to the symbolism of mystery. It was a sacred building which now revered by many as the core church of Freemasonry. William Sinclair was initiated in one of the most important chivalric orders of Europe, being described as the Knight of the Golden Fleece, one of the enlightened, or the noble with unique talents, and as the man with exceptional talents dedicated especially to the construction of castles, palaces, and churches. The Earl was the patron of masons in Scotland, and there is also evidence that he was named Grand Masters of Masons and other heavy and light craftsmen guilds in Scotland in 1441. It is worth mentioning that, according to Teresa Ranford, the director of the Scottish Poetry Library, the name Rosslyn in Welsh translates to ancient teachings passed down from generation to generation. The Rosslyn Chapel. Count William brought skilled and experienced masons from across Europe to erect the chapel, significantly enlarging at the same time the area of Rosslyn village in order to provide accommodation for them. For their labor, the masons were paid £40 a year, a huge sum at that time when ordinary masons usually earned £10 a year. The precision imposed on the construction of the Rosslyn Chapel could be described in modern terms as quality assurance, because the nobleman was the only one who had power of decision on any aspect of the construction, design, as well as on the works of art within. The initial plan was to build a large cathedral with a high tower in the center, a sort of church with several priests, with a vicar, 6 canons, and 2 choir boys. The foundation, which was laid in 1446 and re-excavated at the end of the 19th century, confirms that the nave had to be 27 meters long. Due to the secrets that surrounded the first 3 centuries of Freemasonry, it is almost impossible to prove that there are links between Freemasons and other esoteric movements that came to surface during the Renaissance era. However, the Rosslyn Chapel sculptures indicate that there were links with the Rosicrucians. Moreover, the abundance of Masonic symbols contradicts the official history of modern Masonry, which claims to have been established only in the 17th century. For example, the sculpture of a cuckold Moses holding the tablets of the law in the southern wing symbolizes one of the Hebrew rituals of early Freemasonry, while the eroded sculpture of Hermes Trismegistus on the east side depicts an ancestor, common to many European esoteric movements. In the last period, a great deal of speculations have been made regarding to the secrets of the chapel cellar. The legal officials refused any kind of underground research, but it's supposed that the treasure of the Templar Knights as well as the Holy Grail to be hidden there. The Templars and the symbols of Rosslyn Chapel. The Templar order had not existed for a century and a half since the Rosslyn Chapel was erected. However, the chapel contains many Templar symbols, half of them being hidden to all except to those initiated, although easily overlooked by many. In the vault of each niche, and extended beyond the crypt's dome, there are sculptures of Sinclair family jagged cross, and at the junction of each cross there is a subtle but well-delimited distinctive shape of a cross pate, characteristic of Templar Knights. Although it is not a standard cross pate, but a celestial cross, the Gnostic cross of universal knowledge. Inside the chapel there is the tombstone of William de Sinclair, who, according to family tradition, led the knights in the last batch which set the English on the run at the Battle of Bannockburn, with thus ensuring Scotland independence. Near the third window on the northern wall, at the top of a smaller pillar, is Agnus Dei Templar seal. No wonder the heraldic hues of the Sinclair de Rosslyn are silver and black, similar to the battle flag of the Templar order, the Bousand. The motto of Sinclair family displayed on the Caithness memorial inside the chapel, "Create in the name of God," is extraordinarily similar to that of the medieval guild known as Solomon's Children, non nobis sed nomine tuo da gloriam, which translates as "Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but to thy name give the glory." One of the figures on the central pillar suspended behind the great altar is Madonna and the baby, and as we have already seen, the veneration of the Black Madonna made the connection between the Templars and other esoteric currents of medieval Europe. Freemason symbols in the Rosslyn Chapel. What can we say about the sculptures of a Christian church of late Middle Ages that has connection with almost any spiritual influence discovered many centuries before the construction of the Rosslyn Chapel? So many things refer directly or indirectly to the initiatory teachings of both Christians and pagans. Even more bizarre is the fact that a series of sculptures commemorate the remarkable achievement of one of the Earl's distinguished ancestor, Count Henry of Sinclair, the first Sinclair, Duke of Orkney, who made at least 2 trips in the New World 100 years before Columbus. To celebrate the exploration of his ancestor, Count William ordered that some sculptures of certain unknown plants to be placed in the chapel, plants which had been brought from America. These represented aloe, Indian corn, plants specific to Native Americans and which at the time of chapel's construction were not known to Europe. In the southern wing, next to the main altar, there is a lintel decorated with a cartridge which contains an expression in Latin which can be translated as "The wine is strong, the king is stronger, the women are even stronger, but the truth overcomes them all." Excerpted from the book of Ezra, this is a quotation from the words of Prince Zerubbabel of Judea, which responded with these words to a riddle from one of King Darius' dreams, and was rewarded with the king's permission to return to Jerusalem from exile in Babylon and rebuild the temple. The Apprentice Pillar. Of all the legends surrounding the Rosslyn Chapel, few are as well known as the legend of the Apprentice Pillar. The legend of the murdered apprentice is a blatant reference to the much older legend of Hiram Abif, the Masonic maester who participated in construction of King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, and has immense spiritual and ritual significance, not only for the Masons who built the chapel, but also for their spiritual heirs, the International Brotherhood of Freemasons. Legend has it that the Mason had received from his patron the model of a pole of perfect craftsmanship and form, but he hesitated to work it before going to Rome or another such place abroad to see the original. He went abroad, and in his absence, an apprentice, having dreamed the pillar in its final form, immediately began to work, and the result of his work is what we see today, a wonder of knowledge. Upon his return, the master mason was overwhelmed with envy and asked who dared to work in his absence. He was told that it was his apprentice. He was so filled with anger and violent passion that he struck him down with a wooden hammer, killing him instantly, thus paying for his reckless and cruel deed. 3 pillars. The 3 pillars that separate the backside of the great altar from the main body of the cathedral are the apprentice pillar, the mason pillar, and a third simple grooved pillar, which is between them, the fellowcraft pillar. The capitals of each pillar are decorated with angels who play medieval instruments. An 18th century Masonic historian says that each true lodge must be supported by 3 large pillars with profound symbolic significance. The Mason pillar symbolizes wisdom, the Fellowcraft pillar, power, and the third, the Apprentice pillar, beauty. Each pillar represents not only its quality but also its function, since wisdom builds, power sustains, and beauty adorns. Also, wisdom has the role to discover, the power to support, and beauty is meant to attract. Each pillar must be built on the same stone or foundation, and that stone in Freemasonry tradition is called truth and justice. He who is so wise as the perfect maester will not be easily affected by his own actions. He who holds the power of a senior guard will be able to withstand and overcome any obstacle of his life. The one who is adorned like an apprentice guardian will be closer to the likeness of God than any other by the humility of the spirit, said Gedrick, a 13th century Masonic historian. Thus, the care that these magnificent pillars in the Rosslyn Chapel were surrounded symbolizes the power of spiritual penetration and the wisdom of Duke William to lay the foundation of this mystical altar. Myth or truth, exaggeration or reality, the answer lies in the hands of our forerunners. Until next time, tell us what you think in the comments.